Conor McGregor really did beat USADA. Breaking news came out last week that the UFC would no longer be using USADA for their drug testing program, and starting January 1st of next year, will be hopefully administering a new drug testing program with a different independent body. And in the wake of this abrupt ending to this partnership comes a lot of convoluted information, with USADA's announcement of Conor McGregor's return and shortly after, split with the UFC, and Dana calling this a scumbag move, him also calling the CEO of USADA Britney Spears for this crazy move, and the UFC threatening legal action against USADA for defamation, and also the guy who interrogated Saddam Hussein in the mix. It's hard to keep track of what's happening and who's right and who's wrong. So today, I'm going to clear the air with the whole USADA situation and try to uncover who's really at fault for the split. But what's pretty clear and not convoluted is that you should check out today's sponsor. UFC fans, that means you. We've got a good one going down this weekend with Makhachev and Oliveira in a rematch. I've partnered up again with my good friends at DraftKings to bring you all an exciting new offer. Right now, new customers who sign up using my promo code TJLovesFights and bet just $5 on any of this weekend's matches will receive $200 in bonus bets instantly. Yeah, you heard that right. New customers will instantly receive $200 in bonus bets when they just bet $5 on any of this weekend's fights. Stay in on the action and use your $200 in bonus bets on DraftKings same fight parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Combine multiple bets together from the same fight, including number of rounds and method of victory. DraftKings is the only place where you can bet same fight parlays. If sports betting is not available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy. DraftKings is offering huge UFC contests this weekend with massive cash prizes up for grabs. Guys, go ahead and download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use promo code TJLovesFights, bet just $5 on any wager, and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code TJLovesFights only at DraftKings Sportsbook. So let's go back to July 10th, 2021. It's the rubber match between Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier, and Conor is coming out hot in this one after Dustin Poirier evened up the score with a shocking knockout earlier that year. In this fight, it was starting to look good with both guys having their moment, but Dustin probably getting the better of Conor. And we all wanted to see how Conor would respond in the second until, unfortunately, this happened. It was a clean break in the tibia and would sideline Conor for quite some time, with no return in the imminent future. And in this time, Conor would pursue his new hobby, bodybuilding. Not only was Conor recovering very well, almost inhumanly well, he was putting on some massive weight and just looked absolutely house. He was on whatever Bane was on for sure.
Oh, you think darkness is your ally?
But all jokes aside, Conor was definitely juiced to the gills, but I don't blame him. His leg split in half, and he said himself he thought his career was over, so I don't mind him taking whatever he needed to take to recover, but damn, he went a little overboard. So let's skip to February of this year. The new season of The Ultimate Fighter is announced, and the two coaches headlining the show would be Conor and Michael Chandler, with them fighting sometime after the season ended. The date that was floating around for this fight was December, but there was one big problem. USADA. See, Conor McGregor exited the USADA testing pool shortly after he injured his leg in the Dustin fight to take the Bane juice like previously mentioned. And in order to come back under USADA rules, he had to be in the testing pool for 6 months, and he could be held from fighting for even more time depending on the results of those tests. And from what I got from USADA's statement that we'll get into shortly, it seems like Dana wanted an exemption for Conor McGregor so that he could come back sooner in December. And this isn't the first time Dana has tried to get an exemption for a big pay-per-view star's return. And in this case, he actually did get the exemption. Ahead of UFC 200, Brock Lesnar would make his return to the UFC and fight Mark Hunt. And you have to remember, Brock was coming back from the WWE and hadn't fought in the UFC since 2011, 4 years before USADA was implemented, so during this entire time frame, he really hasn't been tested. So obviously Brock was going to piss hot, so Dana pulled a few strings and got Brock an exemption from USADA testing, and I'll let Joey tell you how the fight went.
It was an embarrassing thing for everybody. And Mark Hunt had every fucking right to be mad. They put him in there with a guy that's coming off rocket fucking fuel. That dude don't eat D-ball. Look at the size of his fucking head. He's taking shit that makes your fucking head grow.
And yeah, that was an understatement. Brock Lesnar a year later would test positive to the PED clomiphene and was suspended by USADA for a year and got his win over Mark Hunt overturned as a no contest, and this effectively ended his MMA career. So let's go back to Conor McGregor. USADA would confirm that Conor McGregor had re-entered the testing pool and would need to be clean for at least 6 months and return 2 negative tests, though we wouldn't find out if Conor could meet these requirements, since USADA would also reveal that the UFC would be ending their relationship this year. The narrative here made it seem like because Dana couldn't get Conor to return in December, they ended their relationship with USADA. And well, Dana didn't take too kindly to this announcement. Dana went on the Pat McAfee show and expressed how this was a scumbag move on USADA's part by spinning the narrative like they did, and is even threatening legal action over defamation unless they say sorry by 5 p.m. Thursday. And USADA not only didn't say sorry, but they doubled down. The CEO of USADA, Travis Tigard, would say in a statement to ESPN, "We stand by our statement and our credibility, our insistence and public insistence that the 6-month period apply to all athletes, including Conor McGregor, be in place. That clearly upset them, and that's what led to the about face that they did from May." Now, in the same press conference that the UFC basically called USADA's statement a scumbag move and complete garbage, they also said in that same press conference their side of the story, essentially saying that they were going to move on from USADA regardless, and this was completely independent from the Conor situation. And essentially their claim boils down to USADA not being able to deliver on their promise of better technology when it comes to drug testing, and that their competitors are doing a much better job, and this is why they're moving on from USADA. I made a video on how fighters could circumvent some of the testing procedures done by USADA, and in particular I showed potential ways in which designer drugs or very advanced PEDs that are personalized to a certain fighter can beat out some of the technologies laid out by USADA. And this seems like a completely reasonable answer, considering that USADA has been rumored to be very easy to circumvent, but I have yet to see any evidence that the UFC had any complaints about USADA and had any potential of moving on from this program onto a new program before all this went down. I'm not saying the UFC is lying to save face. Maybe the UFC kept this under wraps, but I have yet to see the evidence online. Now again, if that narrative is true, it's a perfectly reasonable explanation as to why the UFC is leaving USADA, at least to me. What doesn't make any sense to me is this narrative that's been floating around that the UFC is leaving USADA or should leave USADA because of USADA's treatment of fighters, especially during testing periods. The whereabouts rule states that USADA must know about a fighter's whereabouts, and USADA can and will test you anywhere at any time. This has led to USADA testing fighters like Paulo Costa in the middle of the night or at weight cuts. And people are using this, I guess, as a justification for why USADA is fucked up and why Dana in the UFC has every right to be mad and leave. But wasn't that the whole point of bringing on a program like USADA and its stringent testing, to test fighters anytime, anywhere? And it seems like everyone is for a clean sport and stringent testing, but as soon as USADA actually does follow through with stringent testing in the form of 24/7 random testing, all of a sudden everyone starts getting mad and thinks that the testing is unethical. If you're really for a clean sport and stringent testing, this means 24/7 random testing, and yes, this can come at inconvenient times like in the middle of weight cuts, on vacation, or in the middle of the night. I mean, if fighters knew the time windows USADA would test, then fighters would easily cycle their drug use so that they wouldn't piss hot during these times. So I just want to stress this and emphasize this one more time. You can't be for a completely clean sport and then also criticize USADA for randomly drug testing. Like, that's the only way that we can truly get a clean sport, is by testing at any given time. And yeah, sometimes it's going to be pretty inconvenient, but I think that is a lesser evil than somebody juiced to the gills and fighting somebody in the octagon. So with that out of the way, let's look on towards the future of the UFC and the drug testing program. So Dana would also announce that he would be moving on to a new drug testing program alongside an organization called Drug Free Sport International. And apparently it's being overseen by George Piro, who was a former FBI special agent who apparently interrogated Saddam Hussein. I guess that's cool and all, but like, is he gonna start waterboarding fighters to see whether or not they actually did drugs? I guess only time will tell. But with any new drug testing program, there will be flaws, but my hope is it's just better than USADA. And there's been a couple ideas, I guess, floating around on the internet. One was coming from Joe Rogan, saying that the UFC should just do in-house testing, which seems like a pretty bad idea in my opinion. I mean, apparently the UFC got rid of the USADA because they couldn't get Conor out there quick enough. So imagine if the UFC was doing their own testing, they would just let their fighters roam free. I mean, at the end of the day, they're a promotion. They need their star fighters to be fighting. So that would be the whole point of an independent body, is so that there would be no conflict of interest and they could bust fighters no matter their star power. And there's also been this narrative, I don't know how serious people are actually taking this narrative, of the UFC just not having a drug testing program at all. So guys like Vitor Belfort, a juiced up Brock Lesnar would just come back to the UFC. A part of me is like, no, I just want to see what peak human performance without performance enhancing drugs would look like in the cage. But at the same time, Brock Lesnar versus Alistair Overeem was pretty fucking sick. So I'm torn here. But anyways, what are your guys' thoughts on the USADA situation, the drug testing situation in the UFC? Who's in the right? Who's in the wrong? Please keep this one civil in the comments. It was getting pretty ugly in my community post. But again, thank you guys for watching. Peace.